Get your brooms out, people. For just the second time this season, the Orioles have completed a sweep on the road. We'll recap all three wins and a great weekend in Atlanta. Coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, July 7th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' sweep of the Atlanta Braves on the road this weekend. I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from all 3 games, including another good Charlie Morton start on Friday, including the Orioles' offense waking up and winning in extras on Saturday, and then a Trevor Rogers gem on Sunday to complete the 3-game sweep. And that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So it was one of the better weekends of Orioles baseball here in 2025. They swept the Braves, and listen, even with a sweep, they are still 40-49 on the year. They are still 7+ games out of a wild card spot with a ton of teams ahead of them in the American League, and they are still 3 and change weeks away from the trade deadline when you really got to make a decision about this team. The O's are still not in a good spot, but we can at the very least feel good about the baseball that they played this weekend, winning all 3 against basically their National League counterparts this year in the Atlanta Braves, a team that has struggled to the same degree, got off to a really slow start. The Braves at one point actually recovered better than the Orioles did. They got back pretty close to 500, maybe to 500 at one point, and then have kind of tanked again to where the Braves now at 39-50 actually have a worse record than the Orioles and are even further back in what has been a tougher National League so far this year. So took advantage of a team struggling to the same level, but it was nice to see the O's go on the road and come up with 3 wins in this series. So let's start with Friday. The Orioles, who were coming off kind of a disappointing series loss in Texas. They had won that opening game Monday night in 11 innings, just a wild win, then came out completely flat on Tuesday and Wednesday, lost the series, had the off day Thursday as they traveled to Atlanta. You're playing another struggling team, but you just don't really know how this Orioles squad is going to respond. But they responded well and got the win on Friday night. It was a close one, but they won it 3-2. And I'm going to start with the 5 things you need to know from Friday night's win. The first thing you need to know is Tyler O'Neill finally returned from the injured list on Friday for the Orioles. O'Neill, who had been on the IL since May 18th with a shoulder issue, that stint of close to 2 months at this point included a setback. He was kind of re-shut down and then had to re-ramp up on a rehab stint. And that was only about a week after returning from his first IL trip of the season with a neck issue when he came back in early May, played a few games, then went right back on the injured list. He said he thinks it's probably somewhat connected, the neck and the shoulder, which makes some sense when they're that close together. But he swung the bat well. He had a 795 OPS in 41 plate appearances in the minor leagues on his rehab assignment, but just a 69 WRC plus in 93 plate appearances with the Orioles after the O's signed him to that 3-year deal in the offseason with the opt-out after year 1 as kind of the Anthony Santander replacement. Hadn't gone well so far. Now the O's finally get him back healthy. They optioned Dylan Carlson to AAA on Friday to make room for O'Neill, and it was kind of a tough break for Carlson. You know, he had an 81 WRC plus overall in 114 plate appearances. He had minor league options. It's not like he was someone who was lighting the world on fire, but if you go back to May 20th, which is when Carlson finally picked up his first hit as an Oriole, since then, 280, 309, 452 slash with a 114 WRC plus. He had been fairly productive and honestly more productive than O'Neill had been before the injury. Now, there's a lot of luck involved. I mean, Carlson was only hitting the ball hard 27% of the time. He had a 333 BABIP. He was pretty bound to come back down to earth, but kind of a tough break for him. I'm sure we'll see him again at some point this season. But O'Neill DHing Friday in the 8th spot in the order, kind of not ready to put him in the field just yet, not ready to move him up in the lineup just yet, but he delivered. He had a single, he had a walk, he scored a run in this game. It was the 8th time this year. He has reached base twice, but only the 3rd time since April 19th. And Tony Mansolino said, they're going to be careful with him to keep him healthy. So he'll DH some, he'll play some right field, he'll sit some against righties. Like, he was fully out of the lineup, got the day off on Sunday and the double day off because the Orioles have a day off here on Monday. It'll certainly cut into playing time of Kobe Mayo. Hopefully it doesn't cut into the Ramon Laureano playing time because of how good he's been. But O'Neill's your guy from the offseason. You want to get him in there. And so far, so good from Friday. Second thing you need to know from that one is that Jordan Westburg returned to the Orioles lineup as well, and he returned with a bang. Now, Westburg wasn't on the injured list this time, but had not played in a week. Hadn't played since last Friday in Tampa, at home against Tampa, with that finger injury. And, he had aggravated the finger once, missed a couple of games, came back, re-aggravated it. X-rays were negative both times, never went on the injured list for it, but missed a good amount of time. In fact, once Westburg was in the lineup on Friday night, when you look back before that, he had only played in one full game since June 21st, entering Friday night. The date of Friday was July 4th. It had been a long time for the Orioles with Westburg out of the lineup, but he's finally back in there. And Westburg said, right, the finger is not going to be 100% when I return to the lineup, but I'm just kind of hoping it's good enough to produce. So far, so good on it being good enough to produce. He played third base, hit second on Friday night, and got the scoring started in the 3rd inning, a solo home run to the opposite field off of Spencer Strider. Also had a single in the 1st and a single in the 5th for his 4th 3-hit game of the season. As Mansolino has said, Jordan Westburg is the glue of this Orioles lineup when he is healthy. He comes right back and starts producing. Home run off Strider. Doesn't give up a lot of those in his 2nd AB back from the finger issue. He is so good when he's healthy. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy over the past calendar year. The Orioles need to find a way to just keep him in this lineup. They also gave Westburg a day off on Sunday, just trying to make sure that finger is going to stay as good as possible because he is certainly productive and important when he is in there. Now, third thing you need to know from Friday's win is that Cedric Mullins provided the Orioles really only other offensive blow in this game. It was a 2-run shot off of Strider in the 5th inning that put the Orioles up 3-0 at the time. And Mullins was coming off a really, really rough month of June when he hit just 156 with a 36 WRC plus and only 2 home runs in the calendar month of June. So he really needed that swing that he had on Friday. And for Spencer Strider, who's, back from the elbow surgery this season, it was just the 2nd time this year and the 9th time ever in his career he has allowed a home run on that incredible slider that he throws. The only other homer hit off the slider this year was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hit one off Strider back in April. And as odd as it sounds, Mullins hitting that long ball, his 13th of the year, he still leads the Orioles in home runs with 13 after that monster April that he had, got him out to this lead. And the Orioles haven't hit for maybe as much power as they're used to. That's one of the reasons why Mullins has 13. Gunner's power has been a little bit down. O'Neill's been on the injured list. Westburg's been out for a while. Cowser was out for a while. Those are a lot of things that are going to lead to Cedric Mullins still being your home run leader. But nice to get him back into the long ball on Friday. Fourth thing you need to know from the series opening win for the Orioles is that Charlie Morton continued the role that he has been on, returning to Atlanta, where he pitched really well for the Braves over the past 4 seasons, but hit free agency again. And this time the Braves were not willing to offer him a 1-year deal, ends up signing with the Orioles. We know he got off to the bad start this season, but has been really the Orioles' ace as of late. And the command was a little shaky in the first couple of innings for Morton on Friday, maybe just the jitters of pitching back in the ballpark. That crowd, that fan base that loves him so much, helped pitch them to a World Series title back in 2021. But he certainly reined it in and started to dominate for a little bit there. Got 19 whiffs total, including 12 of them on the curveball alone. That pitch had more horizontal break, meaning more, side to side, more right to left than it usually has. And 19 swings and misses in a single game is the most for Charlie Morton since June 15th of last year when he was pitching for these Atlanta Braves. And even the 2 runs that he gave up that Morton did, his final line in this one was 5 1/3, 2 runs, 6 hits, 7 Ks, 1 walk, and a home run on 97 pitches for the right-hander. But those 2 runs he allowed, there was a fair amount of bad luck involved in that when, he threw 5 scoreless and the Braves got 2 on him in the 6th and he left in that inning. The inning started with a little duck snort bloop single that was 65 miles per hour exit velocity off the bat and it dropped in. Then he seemingly had Braves catcher Drake Baldwin struck out for the second out. He threw an 0-2 fastball and painted it perfectly on the inside corner, but home plate umpire Austin Jones, who's just in his second year in the big leagues as a home plate umpire, and if you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, you can see the pitch chart here from StatCast and Baseball Savant. You can see that third pitch, four-seam fastball just dotted right on the inside corner. Should have been a perfect called strike three for the second out of the inning. For some reason, it was called a ball. Then he throws a curveball in the dirt. Then he tries to throw another fastball up high, just leaves it out over the plate a little bit. And Baldwin, that time, knew what to do with it, crushed it into right field for a two-run homer to make it a 3-2 game. And that was pretty much it for Charlie Morton at that point. And for Morton, it's something he hadn't done in a while. First home run that Morton had allowed since May 26th against the Cardinals when Pedro Pajes got him for a two-run shot in that game. And then he gets 0-2 on Ozzie Albies and then hits him with a back foot curveball, and his day was done at that point. So he did have a walk and a hit by pitch in this one, but just some bad luck. You never know how that inning goes. If he gets that called strike three, does give up the 2 runs, comes out of the game, but was still good, and he continues his run. It's now the last 10 appearances for Charlie Morton, where he has just been great in that stretch. 45 2/3 innings pitched, 41 hits allowed, 56 strikeouts to just 13 walks, and a 2.56 ERA for Morton in that stretch. And let me tell you right now, again, even with the sweep this weekend, the Orioles still should be sellers at the deadline, especially with their rental pieces like Charlie Morton. And teams are going to want Morton. And the Orioles at this point, they are going to be able to trade him. That would have seemed wild 2 months ago. Now it's the reality. Among all starting pitchers in that stretch in Morton's last 10 appearances, he's 9th in FIP. Among I'll talk about it on a later episode, but there's about 18 rental starting pitchers that may be available at this year's deadline. Morton has the best raw stuff, the best stuff plus numbers out of any of those 18. He's going to be a more coveted asset at the deadline than many may think. The Orioles are going to legitimately be able to get something out of him. He's only got a few starts between now and the deadline. He keeps pitching like this. I mean, he's certainly going to be worth more than Eflin and Sugano, and maybe be one of the better pieces the Orioles are going to be able to move at this deadline. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 3-2 series opening win over the Braves on Friday night is the bullpen came in after Charlie Morton and just completely shut this thing down. They were perfect. 3 2/3 perfect innings from the bullpen. Only 1 strikeout, but they threw only 31 pitches to go 11 up, 11 down against this Braves lineup. Now, Andrew Kittredge was the one who relieved Morton in the 6th, 3-2 game, runner on first and 1 out. Took him 1 single pitch to roll a 6-4-3 double play ball and get out of the 6th. Kittredge came back out there, went 1-2-3 in the 7th as well. His inning and 2/3 scoreless was his longest outing as an Oriole so far. Then they went to Brian Baker, 1-2-3, easy 8th inning. First clean inning for Baker since June 18th. He's been allowing a few base runners recently, but this was only an 8-pitch inning. And then they go to Felix Bautista, and he does the same. 1-2-3 on just 11 pitches to lock down the save and the 3-2 win. To be holding a 1-run lead since the 6th and not have your bullpen even allow a base runner is pretty impressive. And also the good thing for Bautista, remember we talked about it, his previous 2 outings coming into Friday, he had not thrown his splitter, his best pitch, in either of those 2 games. It was very odd. It was like the first time he'd ever done that in his career in back-to-back outings. Well, he went back to the splitter finally on Friday night, helped him get that 1-2-3 frame, helped him get the save, and the Orioles' victory to open up the series. And that's something the O's have done well. That made it 6 consecutive series in which the Orioles had won the opening game. Unfortunately, then they just start losing after that in a lot of those recent series. But that wasn't the case this weekend. They came back on Saturday and found a way to win the game and win the series. I'll tell you how they did it coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money was a little bit easier, or at least felt a little bit easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you are also building wealth. Now for me, first thing that's easy with Monarch Money, there's an app. It's an everything in one app, making it easier to manage your money day to day. And I share my finances with my wife. That's a big step in your financial future. Monarch helps you just stay on the same page, helps us stay on the same page with everything we need. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. So the Orioles once again got a series opening win on Friday night, but the thing they haven't been able to do lately is really win any of the other games. They turned that around on Saturday this weekend. Final score in game 2 of this series, Orioles 9 and the Braves 6. Took them 10 innings. They went to extras, but the Orioles won it to clinch a series victory. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the O's win in extra innings on Saturday. And the first thing you need to know is the Orioles offense jumped out there early with the long ball. Now, the Braves hit the ball out of the ballpark too, and an Austin Riley home run in the first gave Atlanta a 2-0 lead, but the Orioles were able to answer back with 3 in the third. It started with Tyler O'Neill, this time in the lineup again, but playing the field, getting his first start in right field on Saturday, coming off the injured list. He destroyed a baseball, facing the lefty Aaron Bummer, who it was basically a bullpen game for the Braves. They have had so many starting pitching injuries that they really only have 4 starters at this moment. So it was a full bullpen game. Aaron Bummer is kind of the bulk opener in it, and he was pretty good. He threw 2 scoreless, but he went back out there for the third. Not so good. Hangs a breaking ball to O'Neill, who crushes a 445-foot solo home run into left field to make it a 2-1 game. Just the third home run this season for O'Neill, who hit 31 last year with the Red Sox. That's what the Orioles were hoping they would get. And for O'Neill, his first homer of the year off a lefty. Tyler O'Neill, who was the second best hitter, only behind Aaron Judge in the majors last year in terms of his stats against left-handed pitching. He was just 2 for 23 against lefties this year entering Saturday. Had been one of the big issues from him early in the year before he got injured. So to see him get his first homer off a lefty, hopefully will get him going this year. And then Jordan Westburg followed it up. He gets a 2-run shot later in the inning, also off of Bummer to put the Orioles up 3-2. He went 461 feet to dead center field for the longest home run of Westburg's big league career to put the Orioles on top. And then after the Braves tied it, they came back in the fourth in a 3-3 game, and Colton Cowser got one as well. A 2-run shot in the fourth to make it a 5-3 Orioles lead. This one was also off the left-hander Dylan Dodd, and it was Cowser's first home run of his 8 this year that has come off a left-handed pitcher, and just the 6th homer of his 32 career long balls that has come off a left-handed pitcher. So a really good sign there for Cowser, who continues to hit the ball well since coming off the IL, taking a lefty deep to give the Orioles the lead back again in that 4th inning. Now, the second thing you need to know from Saturday is that unfortunately, Dean Kremer really could not hold any of the leads he was given. Kremer went only 4 1/3 innings in this game, allowing 5 runs on 8 hits, 3 strikeouts, 1 walk, and 2 long balls allowed on 87 pitches. For the Oriole right-hander, the 4 1/3 innings he went ties for his shortest start of the year. He also did that back on April 4th. But it had been a great stretch for Dean Kremer. He did not complete 5 innings in this game. That was the first time he was unable to complete 5 since April 9th. Like, Kremer has, at the very least, been giving the Orioles some sort of length every time he goes out there for essentially the past 3 months. And that just did not happen on Saturday. The Braves were all over Dean Kremer. And Kremer had been great lately. Entering Saturday, Kremer had a 2.98 ERA since the beginning of May. After he had that disastrous April, he turned it around in May, but he's going to have starts like this. This is who Dean Kremer is. Even when he has a sub-3 ERA over the stretch of 2 months, he's not a number 1 or number 2. He's a number 3 at best. It is more so a 4 or 5 in a good rotation. That's what Kremer has been when he's been really consistent for the Orioles since 2022. But he's always going to have starts like this. The stuff is not good enough to maintain a sub-3 ERA for an entire season. And listen, like, Kremer, again, a 2.98 ERA since May 1st entering Saturday. But Saturday was the 5th start in that stretch in which he allowed at least 4 earned runs in a game. Like, he's going to have some of these closer to blow-up outings. Like, he sprayed his splitter around a little bit, just didn't have the command of his best pitch, at least his best strikeout pitch. He got behind too many hitters in this one. And that's just going to happen to Kremer. And it's okay, because I'm fairly sure he's going to bounce back in his next start, and presumably against Miami on Friday night, and give the O's 6 innings of 2-run ball, and that's what you see from Dean Kramer. Now, it could have been worse, right? He could have allowed 6 earned runs and not even been out of the 4th inning, if not for a great Cowser to Henderson to Sanchez relay to the plate to get the final out of the 4th. So that was helpful to Dean. He got the first batter of the 5th and then was removed. Just didn't have his best stuff. But the third thing you need to know from Saturday is on that relay that ended the 4th inning and kept the game tied at 5, Gary Sanchez got hurt. The Orioles could not withstand another catcher injury, and yet here we are. Jacob Stallings replacing him in the 5th inning, Sanchez leaving with an injured right knee. Tony Mansolino did say after the game that Sanchez did injure it on that play at the plate in the 4th inning, but it was also odd because he also slammed his knee into a big microphone box in the 1st inning that's behind home plate when he was making a catch in foul territory. Now, Sanchez got an MRI after the game, and the Orioles revealed on Sunday it is a moderate PCL strain in his right knee. There's no timetable right now. It's kind of doing some research on guys with this injury, maybe a 3 to 6 week issue, depending on the severity. Now, Sanchez was placed on the injured list on Sunday. The Orioles went and got Alex Jackson from the Yankees to be their new backup catcher. We'll talk about this more later and on tomorrow's episode. But, you already had Adley Rutschman, Chadwick Trump, and Maverick Handley as catchers on the injured list. There's still no baseball activities for Trump or Handley. Adley's at least running in the outfield. He's trying to get back by the end of July. We will see. It was just David Banuelos and Samuel Basayo catching in AAA at the moment. The Orioles needed more depth anyway, so they go and get Alex Jackson. There's 12 catchers on the injured list right now in Major League Baseball. The Orioles have 4 of them in Adley, Sanchez, Trump, and Handley. It is ridiculous the amount of catching injuries they have sustained. I'd be interested to see if a team has ever had 4 catchers on the big league injured list at one time in a season. It's just unbelievable bad luck here for the O's, but they push on to try and get some production from their catchers. And they did get it on Saturday, because the 4th thing you need to know is Jacob Stallings entered that game. He's been the backup catcher for about a week and a half now, and ended up having the biggest swing of this game for the Orioles. Did draw a walk in the 8th. That was his first time reaching base as an Oriole, but didn't come up in the game. But then he came up in a huge spot. 10th inning, Orioles leading 7-6 with runners on first and second and 1 out. Ramon Laureano had already doubled into the corner to score the zombie runner and give the Orioles the lead. They intentionally walked Ryan O'Hearn with the base open at first to pitch to Jacob Stallings, which makes sense. He was hitting 143 when he was released by the Rockies and still didn't have a hit with the Orioles, but Stallings got it done. Facing Rafael Montero, runs the count full, gets a fastball, and rips it into the left field corner for a 2 RBI double. Laureano scores, O'Hearn scores from first to give the Orioles a 9-6 lead. His first hit with the O's, just his 4th extra base hit of the season, when you include his tumultuous time early this year in Colorado. And Stallings became the 2nd Oriole of the week for his first hit with the team to be a go-ahead hit, or not a go-ahead hit, but a RBI hit in extra innings. Luis Vasquez did it Monday night in Texas when he gave the Orioles the lead in the 11th with his first Oriole hit. Then Stallings does it on Saturday. Listen, Stallings is going to have to do more with Gary Sanchez now also on the injured list. He right now is, I think the Orioles are going to do more of a catching split, but Stallings will probably play more than Alex Jackson does. So he's kind of the de facto Orioles starting catcher right now. Imagine I go up to you in March and I say, hey, on July 7th, Jacob Stallings is going to be considered the Orioles starting catcher. You're going to say, Jacob Stallings is on the Rockies right now, and he's 35 years old. And I'd say, yeah, that's where the Orioles are at right now. He's going to have to do something, and he certainly did something in extra innings on Saturday. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 9-6 win to clinch this series Saturday afternoon is that the Oriole bullpen was able to come in and shut things down when needed, because they only got 4 1/3 innings from Dean Kramer. So it was on the bullpen once again, and they delivered. Gregory Soto got through the 5th to keep it a 5-5 game. Scott Blewett did have a little trouble in the 6th. He loaded the bases with no outs, but wiggled out and only allowed 1 run. Things could have gotten much worse, but it was important that Blewett only allowed the 1 run that gave Atlanta a 6-5 lead. And otherwise, the Orioles were able to tie the game later, tie it at 6. And Andrew Kittredge, Brian Baker, and Felix Bautista all combined to keep it scoreless going into extra innings. And then, how about this? With a 9-6 lead going into the bottom of the 10th, it was Yennier Cano who came on and locked down the save in the 10th inning. It was Cano's first save since August 3rd of last season, and the first save of his big league career that came in extra innings. Now, the concerning part was you hear all those names in a big bullpen game, tie game late into extras, and you're like, where's Seranthony Dominguez? He's been the Orioles' best reliever over the past month. It was concerning that he didn't pitch in any of those spots, and we did find out on Sunday morning that Dominguez was not available. He had not pitched since last Monday in Texas. A couple of nights ago, he slept on his back wrong, had a sore back. The Orioles were hoping he would be available on Sunday, but he was not available in those key spots Friday and Saturday where the O's would have used him. But they certainly needed him on Sunday, and they did use him then. But they got out of it without needing Dominguez on Saturday and still got the 9-6 win in extras and clinched the series. And series wins on the road are great. But when you are trying to dig out of this gigantic of a hole and turn your season around, series wins sometimes aren't good enough. You need a lot of sweeps sprinkled in there as well. The Orioles had only 3 of them coming in on the season, but they got that sweep on Sunday. They brought the brooms out with another close win. And I'll tell you how they did it to finish off the show coming up next. So the Orioles get the win Friday. They get the win Saturday, but they're trying for the sweep on Sunday, right? The sweeps are really the only thing that's going to help you climb out of this big hole that you've put yourself in now over halfway through the season. And the Orioles got it done. They hold on for a 2-1 win Sunday morning in Atlanta on that Roku morning game to complete the 3-game sweep. Their 4th of the year, their 2nd on the road. The season also swept the White Sox and Angels at home and the Mariners in Seattle earlier in 2025. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles Sunday win over the Braves. And the first thing you need to know is Trevor Rogers just keeps looking like that new and improved version of himself. He gives the Orioles 6 2/3 scoreless innings. His second longest start as an Oriole. Of course, his first was the 8 scoreless against Texas a couple of weeks ago, but 6 2/3 scoreless, 4 hits, 6 strikeouts, 2 walks on 88 pitches. Rogers' ERA is now at 1.57 on the season. Let me say that again. Trevor Rogers, again, smallish sample size, right? We're still talking about only 5 starts, but a 1.57 ERA. It is a completely different pitcher than the one we saw last year. And the 6 strikeouts, his most as an Oriole, his most in his 9 starts with the O's. First 6 strikeout games since July 3rd of last year with the Marlins, so over a year ago since he had done that. And just the 4th time in Rogers' big league career in which he's gone at least 6 2/3 innings, scoreless, with at least 6 strikeouts. Of course, the first 3 times he did it were in that awesome 2021 rookie season with Miami. A lot of Rogers fun facts are he's done this for the first time since 2021, and that came up again on Sunday. Now, the command was great early. He breezed through the first 3 innings. His fastball, both the 4-seamer and the sinker, command was pinpoint. Velocity was a tick down, but it was still pretty solid for both of those pitches. But then he hit a little bit of a command rough patch. He threw first pitch balls to 6 out of 7 hitters in a stretch in the 4th and 5th innings. He was putting pressure on himself. He was getting behind everybody, ended up walking a hitter as well. But he got big outs to escape it. Got a big strike out of Nick Allen to escape 2 on and 2 out in the 5th. Got a huge double play to end the 6th inning. And he found a way to pitch into the 7th. And he wasn't super dominant in the middle of the game, but he found a way. And the struggling Braves offense certainly helped him. But I was most impressed by the slider and the sweeper. Combined with those 2 pitches, he got 7 whiffs on 13 swings against those 2 offerings. And they were the 4th and 5th most used pitches for him on the day. But the sweeper especially, it's a new pitch, right? He always had that kind of harder, tighter slider. This is a slower, with more horizontal break kind of pitch on that sweeper. And he'd only thrown 8 of them total all season coming in. It was a new pitch for this year. He'd thrown a couple of them in each of his first 4 starts, but had never thrown more than 3 in any start. He threw 6 of them on Sunday, still his number 5 pitch, but 3 whiffs on 4 swings. He threw more of them. He threw them to righties and lefties, and especially against lefties, coming from that more sidearm arm angle that Trevor Rogers had. That pitch is devastating to left-handed hitters. Got a couple of huge strikeouts on that pitch, especially a big one late against Matt Olson. He was just really, really good in this game, and what a turnaround. I mean, I'll tell you what, Connor Newcomb and Kyle Stowers had never thrown 6 2/3 scoreless against the Atlanta Braves, and that's what Trevor Rogers did on Sunday, and it continues to be awesome to see. Second thing you need to know from Sunday's win is that Jackson Holliday went deep on his big offensive day. 2-run homer in the third inning for Holliday off Brave starter Grant Holmes, put the Orioles up 2-0. It was Holliday's 11th long ball of the season. Hit it just 98.7 miles per hour off the bat, kind of out in front on a slider, but had just enough strength to barely get it over the right field wall to give the Orioles the lead. And Holliday ended up with a huge day in this one. He goes 4 for 4 with that home run, a double, drove in the 2 on the homer. For Holliday, it was his second career 4-hit game and his first of the season. Against Boston on August 16th of last year, he went 4 for 5. That's the other time he's had 4 hits. And it was the 8th 4-hit game by an Oriole this season. Laureano's done it twice, and then Gunnar, Gary Sanchez, O'Hearn, O'Neill, and Westburg have each done it once. But for Holliday, it's the 11th career game with at least 3 hits, and the 9th time this season he's had at least 3 hits in a game. That leads the Orioles. No other Oriole has more 3-hit games, or 3+ hit games, I should say, than Jackson Holliday. Second place on that list is Ryan O'Hearn with 5. Holliday's got 9. He has 5 of them in the last calendar month alone. And it's weird because he hasn't been actually red hot in general in the last month. He's just kind of been okay. But he's coming up with big games when the Orioles need them. And he was huge out of that leadoff spot on Sunday. Now, third thing you need to know from this one is that the Orioles offense really did not do anything else besides that Holliday homer. It was enough, the 2 runs they got off that, but that was all they scored in this game. That's not ideal to have 4 of your 6 hits come from one player and both of your RBIs. It ended up being enough, but it wasn't great. Now, the Orioles, remember, the first 2 months of the year, they were dreadful with runners in scoring position. They were one of the worst teams in baseball, one of the worst teams ever in those spots. But quietly, the reason why they've been playing just such better baseball since the beginning of June, they had a 16-11 month of June, they get the sweep here, is because they've gotten timely hitting. And runners in scoring position, hitting is not really sticky. It varies. It looks closer to what your entire offense is doing. But you score more runs when you come up bigger in the key spots. It's tough to change things because they're just at-bats like all the other ones are, and they're not usually sustainable numbers. And that'll tell you why a team will have 2 months where they're terrible. And then since June 1st, the Orioles have been the best team in baseball with runners in scoring position. A 153 team WRC plus this entering Sunday with runners in scoring position was the first in the league. Their 291 average in those spots in that stretch was 3rd in baseball. But they struggled on Sunday. They went 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position in Sunday's game. The Holliday 2-run homer came with a runner on second. It was the only hit they had in those spots. And they came up empty in big spots. 6th inning, had a Holliday single and a Ramon Laureano hit by pitch to open the frame. Then Gunnar grounds out, and Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Arias both strike out to put up a 0. And then the 8th inning, they get a leadoff single from Jacob Stallings. They get a double into the corner from Jackson Holliday. They put runners on second and third with nobody out. Laureano K's, Gunnar grounds out. The run doesn't come home. They intentionally walk Ryan O'Hearn and get Ramon Arias to ground out with the bases loaded to end the frame. Could have really killed the Orioles to leave those big spots and leave those runners out there. It didn't, but it certainly could have. Also, the Braves turned a double play in each of the first 3 innings of this game, erasing any Orioles rallies. It tied the season high for the O's with 3 double plays. This is now the 4th time the Orioles have had 3 double plays turned against them in a game this year. But the weird part is, that's the season high. They have now won all 4 games this season in which the opposing team has turned at least 3 double plays. Kind of an odd stat, but seems to be a recipe for success for the Orioles so far this year. 4th thing you need to know from Sunday's win is that Jacob Stallings made his first Orioles start. Mentioned he had to come into the game with Gary Sanchez getting injured on Saturday, had the big hit in the 10th. Well, he was starting behind the dish on Sunday because, as I mentioned, Gary Sanchez was officially put on the injured list with a mild PCL strain in his knee. I know many people calling for Samuel Basallo, but the Orioles opted for another kind of backup third catcher, veteran journeyman type guy, as they sent cash over to the Yankees and got Alex Jackson back. And they activated Alex Jackson as the backup catcher, put Gary on the IL, and moved Jorge Mateo with his hamstring issue to the 60-day injured list to make room on the 40-man roster for Alex Jackson. Now, Jackson, 29-year-old right-handed hitting catcher, been in AAA with the Yankees this year, basically been a league average AAA hitter, 226, 308, 463 slash with 10 homers and a 101 WRC plus for AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre. Former top 50 prospect. He was a first-round pick out of high school in 2014 was Jackson, seen as this huge power bat catcher with all the defensive tools. he's played in the big leagues before with very little success over, 4 or 5 different seasons, but never really turned into the prospect he was supposed to be. But he's going to fall into this category somehow. But Jacob Stallings was the one who started Sunday, had a single in the 8th after the big hit on Saturday. And as I mentioned, he's going to get some playing time here as Jacob Stallings, and hopefully he can return to the bat he had in Colorado last year when he actually had a pretty good season for the Rockies before kind of falling off a cliff and getting released by Colorado early this year. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 2-1 win over the Braves on Sunday to complete this sweep on the road is that the Orioles bullpen was able to hold on. Now, they got 6 2/3 scoreless from Trevor Rogers, and that certainly makes things easier, but it was a bullpen that was down some guys. Felix Bautista, Brian Baker, and Andrew Kittredge all pitched in both Friday and Saturday's win, so all 3 of them, 3 of their best relievers, unavailable for this game. You got your main closer, your main 8th inning guy, and one of your middle relievers all not out there. So the Orioles had to do what they had to do without those 3. Now, Yennier Cano comes in, runner on third, 2 outs in the 7th, strands him there, then gets 2 more outs in the 8th before giving it over to Gregory Soto, who strikes out Matt Olson with a runner on second and 2 down to keep it a 2-0 game. And then luckily, because again, with Bautista and Baker out, that third 9th inning option for the Orioles this year has been Sir Anthony Dominguez, and he wasn't available Friday or Saturday with the back issues, but luckily he was available finally again out of the bullpen on Sunday, pitching for the first time since Monday night in Texas. He comes out in a 2-0 game looking for the save. And remember, he was a closer for the Orioles for a while last year. He'd been a closer for times earlier in his career with the Phillies before he came to Baltimore. So he's used to that role, but it wasn't as perfect as you'd like. It's not the role he's been in this year. It's some of coming off the back issue. He was a little rusty. Gives up a solo homer with 1 out to Sean Murphy just over the wall in left center to make it 2-1. Then gives up a single, but gets strikeout, ground out to end the inning, secure his 2nd save of the year for a 2-1 win. And it's funny, Dominguez's other save this year was in Boston back on May 24th. It was also a 2-0 lead in the 9th. He also gave up a solo homer in the bottom of the 9th, also allowed some other traffic, but got the final out and closed it out for a 2-1 win. He does it again. He's got that awesome stuff. It's a good thing he's not long-term hurt. It's a good thing he's not going on the injured list because he is at the very least, a big-time trade chip for this Orioles team. He also now has 17 1/3 consecutive scoreless innings coming out of the Oriole bullpen. He's been their best reliever for a while, and he finds a way with that new splitter to lock down the win on Sunday, and the Orioles get the brooms out and lock down an awesome, awesome sweep over, albeit a struggling Atlanta Braves team, but a talented Braves team all the same. And the Orioles win all 3 and reward themselves with an off day here on Monday. But even with the day off, still got a podcast episode coming to you. We're in July. We're getting close to the trade deadline, but we are also even closer to the MLB draft. That's right. We are just, as we record here, 6 days away from the draft. The Orioles have the 19th, 30th, and 31st picks in that draft. So who are they going to select? Joe Doyle of Future Stars Series Plus, great draft analyst, comes on this podcast pretty much every year to talk about the draft. He is back on tomorrow's episode. We'll talk to Joe about who the Orioles could get at 19, what interesting players they could pick up at 30 and 31, and will this be the year Mike Elias takes a pitcher higher in the draft? We'll chat about that and a little bit about the Orioles catching situation as well coming up on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.